Hello everyone, Guillaume René-Sylvain here, host of the Ecommerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. Today's guest is René-Sylvain Bédard, CEO of Indominus Consulting. He's a cybersecurity expert. Today we'll be talking about cybersecurity prevention, how to protect your company at a high level. Before we get started, we have our sponsorship message.
This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to reduce human processing errors, our company MageMontreal can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento e-commerce platform, also known as Adobe Commerce. We're among only a handful of certified companies in Canada. We do everything Magento related. If you know someone who needs design, support, training, maintenance, or a new e-commerce website, email our team at support@magemontreal.com or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com.
All right, René-Sylvain, thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure.
All right, can you give us a very brief overview about you just before we dive into the topic?
Yes, of course. Basically, IT consultant for 25 years, 11 of which were at CGI, where I became a director for consulting services with 22 direct reports. Did architecture for some very small and very high-end customers, ranging from small industry in Laval engineering firm, all the way up to Bombardier Aerospace with 30,000 seats, Bank of Canada with very security demanding environments. So, been around.
Cool. All right, so let's dive right away then. How do I protect my company at a high level? So obviously here we work with e-commerce merchants, so manufacturers, import, export companies, also called distributors or retailers. It's not exactly their core focus, but they know it's important, or maybe you want to establish how important that is, and then how do I protect my company?
So all companies today require a computer to function. If you don't have a computer anymore, you can't bill your customer, you can't know your inventory, you can't know what's actually happening, within your company. You can't bill staff, you're not able to function. So when you look at the ransomware attack patterns, their goal is to paralyze your company. And once they've paralyzed you, all they do is basically send you a bill and tell you, look, it's going to cost you $500,000, $1 million, $2 million if you want your data back. In order to avoid that, it's not the day of the attack or the day the payload is actually rendered that you need to act. You need to act ahead of time. 80% of those attacks come through email. And so basically educating your staff, making sure that they don't click on everything, and making sure that they can actually recognize a phishing attack or a spam and be able to mark it as such. Those are the basic steps, but that will already get rid of 80% of the attacks. Then you need good software protection solution in place, like an EDR, endpoint detection and response. That's basically the evolution of the antivirus. And those will catch attacks that are what we call 0 day. So an attack that when you click on it, it's a live attack, and it's a brand new attack every time. That will allow you to stop any attack that would have come in. So you're now at 85 or 87%. Then you need to make sure that your desktop security is well configured. There's concepts such as MFA, multi-factor authentication, when they send you a number to your phone to make sure that you are who you say you are. Well, if you're authenticating that way, then it means that if someone grabs your username and password, they can't use it against you, because you'll be warned. You'll go, why am I receiving this text and I'm not the one authenticating? You'll know someone's authenticating on your behalf. So those are, basic steps that allows you to basically slim down the possibility of being ransomed.
Okay, and you talk about that evolution of the antivirus. I don't think this is very well known. Can you please elaborate on this?
Sure. So the way an antivirus works is basically I have a database of known attacks, and if I recognize the pattern of such an attack, I'll stop it. Nowadays, you have threats that are known as 0 day. So basically, before it even becomes known to the antivirus, it's already available to attack your workstation. So that means that You need software that's basically doing pattern recognition. It recognizes a pattern as being an evolution of an attack or as being malware. And those are known as EDR. You have Defender for Endpoint from Microsoft that does that. You have SentinelOne that does that as well. There are a few very niche software manufacturers that do that.
All right, and let's come back to the first topic. You said 80% of attacks come through email. So you can teach your staff to like not click on everything, to maybe do a little more than that, maybe even learn how to view the source in an email with right-click view source in like Outlook. So it will give you additional data, like it will say more in detail who it's from, because it may say, oh, it's from Apple, but they're just spoofing, pretending to be Apple. And very often the view source, you can see that they don't have the other credential, doesn't check the other security patterns there. So in addition of training your staff to try to recognize pattern, they might still miss it. You know, if someone is a really, really good fraudster, he might send you a fake email that looks convincing enough that, you know, he might get some of your staff. Are there additional measures that you can put in place to sort of protect yourself there?
So that 80% of attacks that come there, you can actually do what we call attack simulations. So basically, we send what we call spear phishing attacks, a very targeted attack to your environment with a crafted message that looks like a malware, and we basically tell you who in your company has clicked on it. And from there, you can actually target training, and you can target also improving their skills. And from month to month, you can actually view progression. A former client of mine actually talked to me about a week ago, and you should have seen their eyes. I mean, their eyes were shining. They actually told me, look, we had an attack. We saw it coming and we stopped it. You know, I mean, to me, that's worth the world, right? Because you're no longer into, we got an attack, we got fun, what do we do? It's, we got an attack, we saw it coming, and we were able to stop it. So that basically makes my day. And in the same line of thinking, you know, the view source is an interesting aspect, but sometimes it's actually easier than that. Sometimes just double clicking on the email where you see a label that says Apple, for example, you can actually see that in the back it's mosquito.org or somebody else that got their network hacked, and they're basically using their email to send spam and to send attacks to other victims. You have to consider the following. There are two main types of attack. You have what we call the drive-by attack, whereas everybody's a victim or everybody's a potential target because they're not targeting your company. You just happen to be one of the 7,000 emails they sent it to, and you clicked. You know, on the other end, when it gets to targeted emails, then you get into somebody that actually took the time to study your CEO, to find out how he's writing, to find out what's your actual corporate signature, who registered a domain that looks like yours, and then crafted a message and sent an inside job specifically for your company. Those are rare. You know, those are made for very large companies or very targeted attack against specific systems. Most of them are just, how many people can we get to click on this thing? And we're sending it to 80,000 people. How many will click?
Yeah, so they're just phishing. They're just phishing there. And there's also like...
They're phishing with dynamite, yes.
Yeah, exactly, with spam. And we've received, even in our company, that kind of like semi-intelligent, that perhaps it was just a script, or perhaps some beginning of AI, that it was using real names from our company, real contacts, but they had like the details wrong, you know? So, but you saw that script had taken a moment to gather information about every single company that it's spam. So how, I know the AI word gets thrown around like a buzzword, and most people don't really know what it means, but what do you see as a role of AI here into those kind of security measures that we have to put in place and protect against?
So we don't see AI so much into ransomware attacks. What we see nowadays is ransomware as a service. So the person who's sending out the original attack will want it to succeed. So we'll do more research than just the drive-by that I spoke to earlier. But it would then take, let's say, 100 company, do the research, try to do as much as possible, make the message as crafted as possible, and send it to those 100 companies, because he will get a cut if the company gets ransomed. So those, at that point, you have people that can be in a cafe and actually be sending the attack. So it's no longer we are Russia and we have this huge nation-backed cyber criminal activity. You're at the point where anybody can be a target.
And when you're talking about this, you're talking about those like sort of grooming networks that you have those sort of affiliate criminal that are trying to find a victim of hacker. And if you finally have a hack that works, okay, these guys, they're bait, they're hooked.
Yep.
Then they pass it off over to like some more, I don't know, to the real organization, the real makers of the hacking system.
And we've seen it. I mean, the last customer we had that we actually did an incident report on, incident response, sorry. Once we closed the door, so at first we saw incoming from one country. And then when we closed the door, we had people from 7 countries trying to come in. So it's not local, it's not geographic, it is now a global network. And as you said, there are affiliates. People are getting paid to do part A while others specialize in part B. And there are even groups now, such as Lapsus, which basically will not create any ransomware. They'll just use whatever's out there and then turn around and use it to gather data about your company. And once they have the valuable data into your company, it's called extortion economics. All they'll do is turn around and put that data for sale and blackmail you for it, basically.
Okay. And also when you're talking about like that kind of ransom economics, like you're also suggesting, I guess, that once there's an infection, do they act right away or they sort of leave it there? They leave like collecting data, then they know how much money you make and how much you can afford to pay to get your stuff back, you know?
So here's the horrifying statistic. You have an hour 12 to react.
Why?
That's the time you have to react. When you double click on that infected email, you have an hour 12 to react. Okay, after the hour 12, they've spread out throughout your network. And where I say it's horrifying is because when you look at the average time to discover that there's been a breach in the network is 208 days.
208. Okay.
So it's a 300,000 to 1. You know?
Yeah, okay, that doesn't work.
The ratio doesn't work, but I understand why it's that way. There are currently 3.5 million open jobs in cybersecurity around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a small business or even a medium business, we need to put up a security team together so that, you know, they look at our security. You just can't.
By shortage of expertise, shortage of labor, and so on. That's what you.
That, and also the fact that you now have the very big. So we can look at Desjardins, we can look at National Bank, Hydro-Quebec, both governments, Canada, Quebec. They have such requirements that they're just hiring as much as they can because they need to protect all of our data. Whether it's a bank, whether it's a government, whether it's a utility, they need to be protected. And that requires a lot of people. And that's even less for the SMBs of this world.
Okay, let's keep talking about SMBs and even the medium companies, like even the few million to 100 million and whatever, that say you have your files in a place like Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever. Like how dangerous it is to get your stuff with a ransomware, how much protection will Google or any of those other Google Drive or OneDrive from Microsoft will give you for your stuff to not get ransomed?
So first and foremost, I'll make a distinction between the enterprise product and the free product.
Okay.
So if we're talking about OneDrive, Google Drive, and Dropbox for personal use, you have zero guarantee. It's not made for that. It's made as a free service. They get paid because they get data about you. No, we agree. But so there's no guarantee there. If you have OneDrive for business, if you have Google Workspace, then there are, let's call them secure parameters that you can put in to protect yourself and protect your data. I'll speak for OneDrive for business because that's my core business. I'm a Microsoft guy. So OneDrive, for example, if everything gets encrypted on your workstation, it will automatically shut off the replication process. So your cloud data stays safe.
Okay.
Same thing as when you have Defender for Endpoint activated within your Microsoft 365 environment. Any abnormal behavior will be shut down right away so that it doesn't get to your data. It doesn't get to your SharePoint. It doesn't get to your OneDrive. So I'm sure that Google has equivalent services. Dropbox for business, I don't know. The thing that scares me is when you look at, because I did the exercise for a customer, I went through the master service agreement for Dropbox, and it basically says that they can share it with about half the world. So I wouldn't put my data there to begin with.
Okay.
You have to read master service agreements, especially if you're going to give them all your data.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. For that part, most people just scroll through, click OK, just trust them. And then, so a company that was a victim of, let's say, a ransomware attack, are you suggesting that more or less all they had to do to avoid that is sort of put your data on OneDrive and enterprise version of Microsoft?
So I won't say that because there is one thing that is not widely known, but it is important, is that Microsoft Cloud is a shared responsibility model. So they will make sure that all the backend, all the operations, everything is secured, but you have to do your part. So just putting it there is not enough. You need to have it configured properly. You need to make sure that all the security policies are there, and you need to make sure that it's configured and you're using it in a way that is secure. If you just leave it by default, you're as exposed as if you were on premise.
Okay. Because then those kind of security measure that, let's say if it starts encrypting your data, no replication to the cloud, I'm guessing, hoping they've put it by default in the set.
Yeah, that's by default, but it doesn't mean that, for example, the phishing wouldn't come in. It doesn't mean that the IR protection for your emails would be there. It doesn't mean that you'd be defended. If you don't put in Defender for 365, the option is, well, it doesn't mean that, for example, it would detect that there's a file that's misbehaving in your network.
Okay. And what about like password protection, password sharing in a business? Like in the worst of scenario, you've put all that in some kind of Google Drive and you're sharing the file around. Ouch. In better scenarios, you have all kind of things like LastPass, Dashlane, and so on. Like, what do you think about that? What do you think are best practices for sharing around passwords in a company?
So ideally, I would say don't. Don't share passwords. That's the first thing. There are a lot of services nowadays that offer what we call SSO, so single sign-on, which can be linked back into, for example, again, your Azure AD, which means that you can use your same password, username and password everywhere. Now, I know as a CEO, I have to do this, right? I have an assistant, I have a director of operations and so on and so forth, and we all have shared password. A password vault is a good way to actually secure things. Again, hygiene. You can't put the same password everywhere. I mean, even if you have a password vault, if the password you use to log in is the same password as 50 of your services, it's useless. Or if your password to log in is, I don't know, vacation, well, guess what? It will be broken within roughly 2 or 3 hours. And then they'll have access to all your passwords. You'll be in even deeper trouble. Or if you have a note on your desktop that says, my vault password is. So it's a hygiene problem. You have to make sure that A, you don't have replication of password. B, your passwords are strong enough. And C, your password to access your vault, if you have a vault, is a monster password. So a few stories about that. In 2005, we did an audit in a chemical distribution company. And basically, my security team back then was able to grab all of the admin password off Post-its that they had pinned on the wall in front of their desk from the parking with a digital camera.
Wow. Okay. From the parking. Oh, wow.
So that's one story. Then the other story is walking to a new job, need a budget for cybersecurity. I'm being told no. I grab basically a off-the-mill password decryptor or Windows NT back then, walk onto the server, grab the file, brings it home, and then I go to the VP on the Monday and says, "Who's Amanda?" And guess what? That was his password. So we sat down and we actually, discussed budgeting for cybersecurity, because that's literally how easy it was to grab the password. I mean, back in those days, we're talking about the 90s, it took me 4 hours to decrypt the entire database of passwords. And we did not have the firepower we have today.
Right. Yeah. For brute force, if there's no limitation, like after 3 failed attempts, you're going to be locked out for like an hour, and then it just incredibly, and then it totally blocks the account after a few missed try.
Now it does. Back then it didn't. But my point is that there is a lot of people that believe that, oh, my password is 5 characters, it's enough. I mean, mine's 16, and I still feel someday like I'm not safe.
Yeah, it has to be longer. It's exponential. So if you're under, I forgot about, I think it was 9 character or something like that. If you're under that, it just 10 seconds nowadays for password crackers, if there's no limitation on brute force access, even less than that in some cases, especially if it's a word from the dictionary, it's going to be like 3-second crack or something.
Yeah, and the dictionaries just keep on going longer and longer and longer and longer. It's insane. The more power we have nowadays, the easier it is.
Okay, so you're the expert in this field. Shotgun question here. What else do I need to know?
Make sure that you have MFA everywhere you can.
Multiple factor, or sometimes called 2FA, two-factor authentication, that you're going to build code on your cell phone or email to, okay. And preferably cell phone, I think, because if you get your email hacked, I'd rather have a text message on my phone. That for sure is
or even better, get the multi-authentication application, either from Microsoft or from Google, or one from LastPass, which basically is an app that generates a number.
Okay. Right.
MFA, 2FA, one thing. Be smart about it. You need to take this seriously. Passwords are a thing that you'll have to live with every day of your life for the foreseeable future. So, you need to be smart about it. You need to have different ones. Ideally, put them in a vault. Let the vault decide for it if you have to. If it says, 8 to 20 character, go 16 or 17, let the vault define the password for you. Save it in the vault. You don't even need to remember it at this point. All you need is your master password. And then for those that have, let's say, a little bit more budget, I would go with something that goes towards zero password, which is basically a token, which allow you to just plug it in, and it basically authenticates you. It can have biometric on it. So there are ways to remove the passwords from your life, basically.
Okay, tell me more about that token stuff here. So, and of course, there's always concern in each time you say, okay, you have a magic token here that can authenticate you. Okay, can it get cloned? Can it get downloaded? Can it be is it just a magnetic field with a few basic validation? I'm guessing not. It must be advanced.
No.
I don't know about this. Tell me more about this token.
So it's not near field. It's like a USB. You have to plug it in for it to work. And then there are some either one-time password or sometimes biometrics, as I said, directly on the token. You can put your thumb on it and basically authenticate you with your thumb. Enterprise-wise, it can be actually managed centrally. So if you have 1,000 of those, you can actually manage them centrally, and you can actually turn around If someone says, "Oh, I lost it," you can disable it on the fly, reissue a new one. So it's very well done. It's very nice technology. There's a few vendors out there, which I won't name. You can do your own It also becomes a preference whether you're on Google or if you're on Microsoft or you're on AWS. There are different flavors, quote unquote, for each.
Okay, so that's interesting. So there's a token that identifies you, and then you can even have your fingerprint on it to identify that it's not a stolen token. It's your token, and you're the one holding it right now.
2FA built in with your tongue.
Pretty neat. Pretty neat. Is that expensive stuff to put in place?
I think it requires volume. So starting at 500 users, you get to have some fairly discounted price. It becomes interesting. And the more you go into volume, the lower the cost, basically.
Okay, so like smaller, and that's not for small companies then. It's a solution for...
Not unless you have very, very nice security budget, which most small companies don't have.
Okay, all right. Cool. So you've already answered the shotgun question. I'm going to throw it again anyway. Anything else we should know, high-level security for a company?
So I would go and say, take the time to have an audit. If you're unsure about how secure or unsecure your company is, take a few days of consulting, have an audit. People will come in, they'll scan what you have for hardware, they'll scan what you have for servers, they'll scan your cloud environment if you're in the cloud, and they'll tell you where your weak points are. I mean, it's not a very demanding mandate. We're not talking about $25,000 or $30,000. It's below $10,000 usually, and basically that will give you exactly where you are. On that, I can add. I'll send you the link later. But basically, we have a on-demand scorecard that we've done of 66 questions that will basically tell your customers, here's where you are on each. Here's where you are regarding insurance. Here's where you are regarding password management. Here's where you are with data management. And we've basically made categories like that for it.
Okay. All right, René-Sylvain, so thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today here. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
rs.bedard@indominus.com.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.